Well, welcome to our next edition of Here's the Thing for April 30th, 2014. DPR, the man, that's who I am, and we have 30 minutes or so of action-packed adventure, and we're going to dive right into it because time is short and we've got a lot to cover. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to be leaning on this subject a lot in the near future. That being Common Core. Common Core, yes. Let's see, how does this work here? Tea Party News Network, Alan Karuba is the source material for this little picture here, which I could show you. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there it is. For your audio people, basically it's 4 children standing with protest signs regarding Common Core. Excessive testing can never replace good teaching. Common Core is the hostile takeover of education. Common Core violates 3 federal statutes and the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which of course we'll talk about later. Got to get right into this though. Don't have a lot of time. Want to cover a lot of material. Had a few computer problems this morning, had to solve, and got started a little late. All dictators and authoritarian regimes know that what is taught in their schools offers the greatest opportunity to maintain control over their societies. Okay, you will find no reference, no mention of education in the U.S. Constitution, and it should not be a function of the federal government. Parents who object to this scheme face bullying, harassment, and harassment from public officials. Now, 2 states, Wyoming and Michigan, have banned the science standards because of the teaching of global warming. So what do we have here? Once again, we have the federal government taking advantage of the fact that the federal government is supplying funding to the schools and saying, okay, we'll give you this money, but there are strings attached. Now we're going to tell you what you have to do to keep receiving this funding. That's the bottom line. Schools are being blackmailed and bullied, and as a result, they're blackmailing and bullying the students and the parents. Like I mentioned last week, you can opt your child out of the test, but if you do that, you're going to have to suffer the consequences. What can I say? Okay, what can I say? I can only say that, again, the Constitution is a very simple document. I've read it over the weeks. I understand it. I'm not a lawyer. You don't need to be a lawyer to understand it. You do need to understand that it is the basis upon which this country is founded, and it works, and it has continued to work, and it will continue to work, and this is in violation of the Constitution of the United States of America. States have the right to establish the standards for public education, and where the schools are, how many schools they have, how they fund those schools, and so on, and so on, and so on. Unfortunately, since the federal funding of education has started to take place, the federal government is now taking advantage of their ability to step in and tell the schools how to educate our children, teaching them things that are irrelevant, testing them on things that they're not taught. I've seen it happen in the school that our son attends. Things are chaos over there. They're so bent on getting that standard up to show good performance to Common Core that it appears that they're forgetting what their standards were and why they are the school they are and why they were the school they were. A lie told often enough becomes the truth, said Vladimir Lenin, who led the revolution that imposed communism on Russia. What better way to ensure big government than to teach children that that's all there is? To force it down the throats of the parents and to teach children that that's all there is. The Department of Education was established by Jimmy Carter in 1979. Since when? Why? I mean, we didn't have any idea at the time what would happen, because we never know what's going to happen until it happens, and by the time it happens, it's too late for us to do anything about it. Common Core is simply a way of saying the government wants our children to learn to be dependent upon them for everything. That home education doesn't matter, parents don't matter. Yeah, maybe that's a little extreme, but think about it. Think about it. Think what the tendencies are. When we let them tell us to wear seat belts and where we could smoke, we let them have a little more control over our lives. We're just letting them have a little more control over our lives. It doesn't seem like much at the time, but every time they take a little step, a big step is soon to follow. Common Core. What can I say? Okay, next subject. When Rand Paul, Sean Hannity, and Glenn Beck have rightfully distanced themselves from Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy's racially bigoted comments, there are still some standing up for the principle on which they sided with Bundy over the government's bullies to begin with. Kyle Becker, Independent Journal Review, that's where the source material is from. Basically what this is about is a black Marine who has said that Bundy is not a racist. They're not a racist. Okay? They're not only he said, this black Marine said not only are his comments not racist, but who are we to determine how another man's perspective on the world, what another man's perspective should be? You know, if you take the time to do your own research, you'll find the statements about some black Americans actually hold weight. He posed a hypothetical question. And this man, a black man, actually wonders himself about the decline of the black family. He believes that we're all slaves in the process, in the waning republic, as he puts it. The federal government is a burgeoning behemoth and a bully on a once constitutional playground. I sincerely hope you real patriots out there who can see through the smoke. Now, Cliven Bundy may not have the most up-to-date views. Cliven Bundy may make comments that appear to be racist, but Cliven Bundy's only looking at the world through his own eyes, and he's allowed to do that, and so is everybody else, and that's what this man is saying. Whether he agrees or disagrees with Cliven Bundy, he defends his right to say what he has to say. And, you know, this is where it's getting bad. This is, again, everyone's being labeled a racist. That's the big escape clause. That's the big push. If you don't agree with what the government's doing, you're a racist. If you don't agree with what the government dictates regarding anything, you're a hater. Cliven Bundy's being bullied by Harry Reid to take over his land, tell him what he's allowed to do with his property. The Constitution does not allow for that. At least not in the sense that Harry Reid's doing it. This man here says, he calls himself Charlie Delta. He says, individual liberties are at stake here, yours and mine. That's the issue. Don't let the liberal media and ignoramuses like Glenn Beck and that weasel Harry Reid make you lose sight of the real issue. You know, maybe Cliven Bundy isn't an orator, but he's a family man, a property owner, an American, a man who's accomplished something in his life, and a man who wants to keep what he's accomplished. There's nothing wrong with Cliven Bundy. It's just that if Harry Reid can brand him a racist, then Harry Reid can justify his negative actions, say, towards Mr. Bundy. We move on. Chicago Public Schools. Chicago Public Schools send out a recorded phone message encouraging children to make sure that their families are signed up for low-cost health insurance and food stamps. Yes, sir. This is from Emily Halsey in the Independent Journal Review. She makes a good point. The goal of good government is to get people off welfare, not onto it. Staying permanently enrolled in these programs, not just for temporary assistance, puts a huge strain on the economy that our nation is simply not equipped to handle. Again, We keep having to be reminded. We who are working, we who are paying taxes, are becoming the minority in this country. 47 million Americans depend on the government to feed them. 47 million. Is that correct? Is that right? Is that not the government once again establishing a situation wherein they can say, we're feeding you now, but down the road we're going to ask for something in return? And what might that be? What might that be? What might people be asked to do in order to maintain their standard of living when the government determines what that standard of living is going to be? It goes back to Common Core. Everything ties together here. I'm having an epiphany, if you will, this week. Everything ties together here. Everything is an effort by the government to put strings on things, to make us obligated to them for everything. For our food, for our shelter, for our everyday needs, for our utilities, for our energy needs, for the education of ourselves and our children. This can't happen. This is not the way a republic is formed. This is anti-American. This is anti-freedom. This is anti-democracy. This is anti-personal rights, property rights, intellectual rights. With 92 million Americans out of work, what are the working Americans supposed to do? Apparently, they're supposed to support them because they're making too much. They're taking it from these people who aren't working. Okay, did I put them out of work? Did I cause them not to have a job? No. Do I want what they have? No. Do I want to be able to hold on to what I've acquired in my lifetime? Absolutely. And why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I have the choice to be charitable when I want to be charitable? It's worked in the past. Later on, I'll get to a point about income inequality, income inequality, and where it's gone, and where it's going, and the ride we're being taken on. Currently, there are 68,000 children in the Chicago Public Schools that are not enrolled in free or low-cost health insurance and SNAP, also known as food stamps. The recording obtained by the Daily Caller says, your child may be one of them. To find out more about your eligibility, call the Children and Family Benefits Unit at blah, blah, blah. The Chicago Public Schools website explains that the Children and Family Benefits Unit works to ensure that CPS families, Chicago Public School families, receive those benefits to which they are entitled. Entitled. Did you know you were entitled to be taken care of by your government? Did you know that your ability to feed yourself, your ability to have health care, your ability to have a home is a public service that you are born to? We all have the right to acquire these things. There's no doubt. But it's not the federal government's obligation to grant those to everyone for no particular cause. In other words, to take it from everyone and give it to everyone else. It doesn't work that way. There's not enough to go around if you do it that way. Capitalism inherently causes poverty. Okay? So do I sound like I'm contradicting myself? No, I'm not contradicting myself. I'm pointing out a terrible fact of life. Capitalism automatically causes poverty. Some people are going to make it and some aren't. That's always been the way. In my own little life, I've had days when I've made it and days when I haven't. Good times and bad times. We roll with it. We don't like it sometimes, but we roll with it. We have to. We have to. Because we came into this world with nothing and we're going to leave with just as much. So in between, we do the best we can. That's the bottom line. I am sick to death of being told that I have things that I shouldn't have. that I've acquired things that I've taken from someone, that someone else is unfortunate because I'm fortunate. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. I have never gone about trying to steal from anyone. I have never gone about knocking someone else down in order to put myself up. If I did, then I've got God to answer to for that. My point is that I don't look to the federal government to make me a better person. The federal government is not supposed to make me a better person. I'm supposed to make me a better person. I'm supposed to pick myself up and do the right thing. I'm supposed to take the initiative to make the best use of my talents and abilities, whatever they may be. And under the Constitution, I have that right. What's made this country great is because we all have that right. If we don't exercise that right, shame on us. Shame on us because we're not taking advantage of the fact that we're alive, that we were given the gift of free will, that we can choose the course of our life in a country that, regardless of where, what they've done wrong in the past, they have a way of correcting it. Not by taking the government and making it the sole controller of all the important things that we do. Rather, by allowing the people to determine where the government's going, where the government spends money, where the government gets money. Being able to earn enough money to put it into the government so that the government can do only that which was intended. Not go way beyond the scope. Take over public education, take over the healthcare industry, take over the health insurance industry, 1/6 of our economy. Where do they go next? Take over the energy industry? Who knows? Yes, I'm frightened. I'm scared. Maybe that's why I'm rambling a bit. I have a reason to be worried. You have a reason to be worried. Because you're being told that you're not allowed to achieve, that you're not allowed to excel, that you're not allowed to be anything more than mediocre. Just like everyone else, if you will. We all have to step down in order to bring other people up. No, when we step down, we're taking the opportunities of those underneath us, if you will, to put it in the only way I can think of. We're taking away the opportunity of those underneath us to rise. Because they're not going to be able to rise any higher than we are. So we're all going to be mediocre. We're all going to give up our ability to achieve and our right to achieve. That's the bottom line, because DPR the man says so. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and go into some international stuff, because I just can't pass this up. Washington, Reuters news agency. Okay, Secretary of State, John Kerry. What a clown. In unusually blunt comments, Kerry accused Russia of using propaganda to hide what he said it was actually trying to do in eastern Ukraine, destabilize that region, and undermine next month's planned Ukrainian elections. He said on Thursday that the United States is drawing closer to imposing more sanctions on Russia by saying time was running out for Moscow to change its course in Ukraine. Does Vladimir Putin actually care? John Kerry is probably one of the largest clowns that's ever represented our government overseas in the past several decades. I mean, the Russians came right back and said, in so many words, screw you. You can't sanction the Russians enough. It's not possible. 40% of the natural gas supply of Europe comes from Russia. You start screwing with them, what do you think they're going to do? I mean, have some common sense, old John, baby. You like to put yourself out there as everyone's going to be happy because Barack Obama is your boss. Everyone's going to be happy because you are a diplomat and a mediator. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. The Russians don't care. Vladimir Putin was part of the KGB. We couldn't deal with them when the Soviet Union was in power. We can't deal with them now. He has an agenda to make his country stronger and bigger, just like everybody else. That's human nature. You're not going to change it. All the talk in the world about broken promises and sanctions and finger-wagging and threats they're not going to change it. It didn't work during the Cold War until Ronald Reagan, and it isn't going to work now. Because maybe Vladimir Putin and his people have learned from the mistakes of the former Soviet Union, and maybe they're going to find a way to reestablish a Soviet Union under a slightly different way of doing things. And we're sitting back and watching them do it, thinking, oh, this is no problem, this is no threat. Of course it is. Look at history, for God's sake. Look at history. All the empires that rose and fell. And why did they fall in many cases? It's because they ignored threats. They thought they could talk it away. They thought they were already strong enough and that they didn't have to be aware anymore of what was going on, because if anything happened, they were ready. Well, guess what? We're not. In fact, the president is scaling our military down. I don't want to go to war any more than you do. And I don't think we'll have to. But if the present administration continues to sit back and allow Vladimir Putin to grow a second superpower in the world, well, there's all kinds of conspiracy theories out there that'll tell you which way it's going to go, but the bottom line is, no matter which way it goes, it won't be good for us. Moving right along on the international scene, Al-Qaeda chief, the president Al-Qaeda chief, Ayman al-Zawahiri, Ayman al-Zawahiri, has called upon Al-Qaeda to kidnap Westerners, particularly Americans, who could then be exchanged for jail jihadists, including the blind Egyptian cleric convicted in 1995 of conspiring to attack the United Nations and other New York landmarks. I thought Al-Qaeda was done. I thought that Barack Obama had eliminated Al-Qaeda when he killed. When he killed, who did he kill? You know, this is what happens when you get to be 63 years old. Your mind goes blank. Bin Laden. Yeah, when he killed Bin Laden, he gutted Al-Qaeda. You know, he's still sending drones over to kill Al-Qaeda leaders. We're still at war with Al-Qaeda. Okay. This was from Reuters, by the way. Yeah, he wants to kidnap Americans and exchange them. Okay, last but not least, we go into the one thing that I was waiting for here. 1,000, well, we got less than 1,000 days left and counting. Here's a quick snapshot of what Obama's done so far. Kyle Becker, once again, in the Independent Journal Review. Seems like a good time to break out fact checks last Obama audit. This is a summary of how Obama's done up to April 2014. Okay. First quarter report. Exchange signups up 7.5 million. Medicaid signups up 3 million. Jobs plus 3,952,000. Unemployment rate 6.7%. Long-term unemployed 3,739,000. S&P 500 is up to 128%. Corporate profits are up 184%. Real weekly earnings are only up 0.2%. Total federal debt is up 65%. Debt held by the public up 100%. Food stamp recipients up 46%. Regular gasoline prices up 95%. Crude oil production up 62%. That's interesting. Petroleum imports down 52%. That's good, actually. New car miles per gallon up 21%. Wind and solar power up 221%. Exports of goods and services up 34%. Home ownership rate down 2.4%. Housing starts up 85%. Guantanamo prisoners down 36%. What jumps out is the unemployment rate, food stamps, and debt. But fact check fails to account for labor participation rate of 63.2%, being the lowest since the 70s. Median household income down 4.5%, nearly 50 million living below the poverty line, and income inequality at its worst level since 1947. Why do we have income inequality? Well, because corporate profits are up. Maybe. Corporate profits aren't up because they're paying less. Corporate profits are up because Barack Obama's Federal Reserve Bank policies are creating cash like crazy, shoring up stock prices. Okay? Bottom line there, income inequality. What is that? What does that mean? It means some people make more than others. Always been. Always will be. It's a fact of life. Again, it's human nature. If you produce, you're rewarded. If you don't, you're not. What you produce has a value. In a capitalist economy, everything has a value. We may not always like the values, but they are the values. And if we choose to pursue a career or a job in something, we have to accept those values. But all of a sudden people are being told not to. People are being told that their government will make them more valuable. Hello? We make ourselves more valuable. We strike out for opportunities. We strike out to make luck occur. The federal government does not have the obligation, should not have the obligation, to make people wealthier. That's not what they're for. They tax. They take money. And they're supposed to use it to keep the country safe. And they're supposed to use it to maintain law and order on the streets. And they're supposed to use it to maintain a system of checks and balances so that no one branch of government can take over, so that the people still have a voice. Because ultimately, we are the government. We're funding it all. We're paying for it. How many times have you told a person, I don't like your service, and remember, I'm paying your salary, so you better give me good service? Why can't we tell the government that? Why haven't we told the government that? Oh, because the IRS will come after you. The secret police. Obama's version of the KGB. Wake up. Wake up, people. Our rights are being taken away in leaps and bounds daily. And this is what we're going to leave our children with. This is what we're going to leave our next generation with. They're going to be taught that that's okay if we allow it to happen. What damage has Barack Obama done to this country? And how long, if at all, will it take to repair? These are big questions. Come the next elections, we have to address those questions. We've got to find a way to send a message to get people in there who can take this thing apart before it becomes so ingrained that it can't be taken apart. We're going down the road towards what some leftists think is a perfect form of socialism. As if there is a perfect form of socialism. There isn't. These people are going to be no better at it than the people that preceded them. They think they are. They think they've learned from something, but they have the same agenda. Government control. Government indoctrination. Government granting of who's wealthy and who isn't. And ultimately, under that situation, the government ends up wealthy and everyone else ends up poor. Don't doubt me, to quote a famous radio show host. Don't doubt me. We've got to move along because, again, time is getting short. Subjects are endless, basically. This week's foray into the Constitution of the United States of America. We'll be going over the amendments that occurred since the Bill of Rights. Okay, the 14th, 15th, and 16th Amendment. Defines citizenship, 14th Amendment. Defines citizenship. Contains the Privileges or Immunities Clause and Due Process Clause and Equal Protection Clause and deals with post-Civil War issues. It was done in 1866, right after the Civil War, and ratified in 1868. Okay, citizenship. Definitions of citizenship. We're having problems with that nowadays. Due process of law. Equal protection under the law. Okay. Again, we can go into the text of it, and maybe we will one day. But the bottom line is the Constitution provides that all of us are equal under the law. Not that all of us are the same, or should be, but we're all equal under the law. And due process under the law must be followed in order for that law to be enforced. The 15th Amendment prohibits the denial of suffrage based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Ratified in 1870. Basically saying all the freed slaves and anyone else who's not white, okay, can vote. Why not? It's been done. Now, I'll admit, obviously I can't avoid the fact that there were areas of the country and people in the country who did everything they could to undermine that. And the government had every right to enforce this amendment. It's in the Constitution. It's the law of the land. If you don't like it, tough. Then try to change it in the proper way. But nobody did. They just went about discriminating and segregating because they could. Because people turned the other cheek. People turned a blind eye. And then along came the Civil Rights Movement. And in the long run, that was eliminated. It's been eliminated. I don't care what the NAACP says. Segregation is basically a thing of the past as far as general practice goes. That's not to say there aren't bigots out there on both sides. But those are human beings. They can be poo-pooed. They can be ignored if need be, and that's what we need to do. We need to ignore the Al Sharptons. We need to ignore the Ku Klux Klans and the skinheads and the Nazis and the Reverend Jesse Jacksons because they're a relic of the past. They're a relic of the past. They're not relevant. In 1870, the Constitution said they're not relevant. All we got to do is go back there, do that, and we'll be fine. 16th Amendment allows the federal government to collect income tax. It allows them to. But in that amendment, if I recall correctly, it's worded in such a way as to say that when you sign a tax return, you're volunteering to pay taxes. You are giving the government permission to take those taxes from you. Unfortunately, once you've done that, you've given them permission for the rest of your life. You can't opt out. You could, but you better be willing to take the consequences and live with them because it's going to be a rough way to go. Okay, so we've got the 14th, 15th, and 16th Amendment. Some of these I'm going to mark because we're going to go back and read them and really get into them because I can see where I may have left a lot out. But I just want you to be aware of what those amendments are. Maybe you want to go read them. Read the Constitution. I'm telling you, it doesn't take that long, and you don't need to be a lawyer. It's not that difficult. It makes perfect sense. That's why it's lasted as long as it has. And that's why, right now, the present administration and government that we have, and all the politicians in Washington, seem to be hell-bent on destroying it. And it's taking them so long to do it, and it's so complicated. Because the Constitution is such a good thing that it's awfully hard to make it bad. It's that simple. Well, for all you audio fans, this is the part of the show you've all been waiting for. We're near the end of this episode, and I have to remind you all that you can email the show at hdt2010@roadrunner.com. You can check us out on Facebook at heresdathing.com's Facebook page. You can visit the website at www.heresdathing.com. And you can watch us, the most entertaining thing of all, on YouTube and Google+. Remember, we invite your feedback. We need your thoughts, because when you tell us what you're thinking, we'll tell you why you're thinking it. Yes, sirree, we've reached the end of this edition of Here's the Thing. DPR, the man, that's who I am. In my own inimitable way, I will wish you a good day, a good week, a good life. Come back and see us and hear us again next week on Here's the Thing. You may even be a part of it.